Welcome back to HRE Insights in 30, where we spotlight the experts, innovations, and ideas shaping risk and compliance today. I am your host, Justin Muscolino, CEO of High Risk Education. Now, today I'm joined by someone who has become one of the most respected voices in third-party risk management. Julie is with us. Julie is the CEO and co-founder of the Third Party Risk Association, which is a global community dedicated to advancing third-party risk practices across multiple industries. Now, a little on Julie. Julie has spent her career helping institutions strengthen their oversight of vendors, partners, and also service providers. And now she's turning her focus to one of the hottest and most complicated issues out there, assessing artificial intelligence in third-party networks. Now, with AI being adapted by fintechs, banks, and vendors alike, the risks and opportunities are massive. So, Julie, thanks so much for joining us today. We are very excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience and specifically about artificial intelligence.
Great. And as we all know, it's a hot topic that we're hearing pretty much everywhere. So let's get started with the questions. So, number one, and this is more of a foundational related question. A lot of people hear the phrase, AI and third-party networks, but they may not know exactly what it means in practice. So, Julie, can you explain what we're really talking about here and how this differs from traditional third-party risk?
Absolutely. So I think a quick definition on what AI really is would be helpful. So all AI is really a machine-based system designed to achieve specific goals by producing outputs like predictions or recommendations or decisions that can affect real or virtual environments. They do operate with some level of autonomy. So that's really the difference between AI versus a bot or some other type of technology that isn't really learning from itself. So the difference really is if the model learns from data or can generalize or adapt based on patterns, it's usually considered AI. If it is rule-based or only statistical, that's usually not considered AI. And that's really important when we're looking at this from a third-party risk management perspective, because what you will start seeing and what we've already seen is third parties marketing their services or products as AI, and sometimes they are not. So I would say really you have to pay attention to that from a third party risk perspective. And also, AI is like any other technology. You're going to assess it from a security perspective, from a financial perspective, from an operational perspective. But the considerations that are a bit different than regular, let's call it regular technology, is the data. So when you put data into artificial intelligence, it can learn from that data. So you are actually training the models with your data. So you really need to take into consideration if you want to allow that as an organization. The other piece is the governance. So AI really needs to have good governance around it because it is making decisions. Whether someone reviews those decisions or allows those decisions is another conversation, but you really need to understand what your third party is doing from a decision standpoint related to that AI. And the last piece I would say is who owns the output?
Yeah.
So this is really a hard question these days because if you're giving them the data, the third party the data, and it's training the model, that initial data set is yours. But then there's some residual data left in there if you're pulling your data out. And who owns that? Who owns the output of that data? So those are some new considerations organizations really need to keep in mind.
Ah, thanks, Julie. Yeah, there's a lot of risks out there when it's associated with AI, but there are proper practices. But also, it's the data that we put in. It's like, garbage in, garbage out. So we have to be very conscious of that. Now, even with the best third-party risk programs, we all know they could have blind spots, right? Especially when it comes to new technology. So, what are you currently seeing, and what are the most common gaps with AI oversight? Whether it's monitoring, the vendor risk, so on.
Yeah, I would say that organizations aren't really, see, AI is new.
Yeah.
And even though it's been around for the last few years, we're really starting to leverage it as organizations. And so the first step, really the gap, is to understand how you as an organization are going to use the AI. So I say before you even start with assessing third parties, you really, as an organization, need to create an acceptable use policy. So defining how AI will be leveraged within your organization, how the data will be used, if you're going to allow it to train models or not, if you're going to allow certain types of AI or not. The second piece to that is then training your employees on
Yeah.
what AI is, how to use it, the security concerns around it. Uh, Training is really important. Your everyone in your organization really should have a general understanding of what AI is, because no longer can you say we're not leveraging AI or third parties are not leveraging AI. I think you should just assume everyone is leveraging AI. And I'll give you an example. Zoom. If you turn on the assistant
Mhm.
to capture what others are saying within a meeting, that is AI. So there are some AI that's probably being used within your organization or other third parties that you're unaware of. And then the third piece is just to understand the security controls around AI. They're very similar to any technology, but there are frameworks now that can help you understand that. So like NIST AI framework, there's a framework coming out that's actually a AI framework of frameworks. We're going to share that as soon as it's made public. And then really understanding that your contracts may need to be beefed up to define types of AI or how your data will be used or decision-making responsibilities or even ownership.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, the training part that you mentioned is obviously as important. And I always have this philosophy, if you don't teach them, really, how do they know?
Right.
So, and one of my favorite parts of training is regarding red flags. So, let's shift to like the practical side a little bit. So, when risk and compliance teams, they're evaluating the use of AI, like you mentioned, a couple of components of it, what specific red flags or even say warning signs should they be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. There's quite a bit related to AI regarding just the complexity of it. So, the fact that AI systems can be trained on data, that can change over time,
Yeah.
sometimes significantly or unexpectedly. Sometimes it's influenced by the environment around it. So, just getting your hands around the complexity, because the data itself can be a risk. Other risks to consider are really AI systems in the context in which they're deployed. They can make frequent iterations that are kind of not as transparent. They may not provide you with as much documentation as you would like around changes to AI. Because again, companies are bringing this in, they're deciding what they're going to do with it, they're determining how they're going to leverage it, how it's going to influence services being provided to you. So they may not know. So month one, when you look at an AI system, may be completely different than when you look at it in 3 months. So I really don't think assessing a third party that's leveraging AI annually is going to be enough anymore. So you really need to put that focus on continuous monitoring and make it risk based. The other big risk I see is with regards to the transparency is just understanding what you should even be looking for.
Yeah.
So I really relate this to AI metrics. So risk metrics or methodologies used by other organizations when they're developing the systems, they may not align with your own or other AI risk metric challenges that you could face are like you don't understand how they're testing, if it's unbiased, or if the data is clean. And so there are certain ways to identify an evidence if they are truly testing their AI appropriately. There's actually tools that you can leverage, and a lot of people don't know about these, but there are tools for bias and fairness detection that you can ask your third party if they're using, such as IBM AI Fairness 360 or Google's What If. There's data quality tools like Talon Data Quality or Trifacta. There's performance monitoring tools like DataRobot or Amazon SageMaker Model Monitor. So there's some tools that your third party should be leveraging
Mm.
to test some of these things.
Ah, good answer. I mean, you put in a couple of good points that definitely stand out. But, it feels like every day AI is being upgraded one way or the other. And, being in a risk function, it's paramount that we stay on top of that and adapt. So, yeah, thank you for that. Now, this is something you kind of alluded to earlier. And I know a lot of listeners out there may not have factored AI into their third-party risk programs at all yet. So, as far as further guidance, and if they're starting from really scratch at the beginning, what's the single most important first step that they should take? Is it a questionnaire to vendor onboarding, or is it reviews to see where AI exists in their ecosystem?
Yeah, I think all of the above. And really, my first tip for any program, trying to implement anything new is to not do it alone. So involve your other stakeholders that do have stake in the game. So it could be compliance, could be legal. Involve your data scientists if you have those. It's certainly security to just understand what the risks or impacts could be to your organization. And then I would say focus on those higher risk areas. So prioritize assessments on areas that pose that greatest risk. So if it's involving sensitive data or high impact decisions or it's customer facing, those are really your higher risk areas that you want to focus on. But yeah, number one,
Mm.
including or involving those key stakeholders. And then number two, just understanding what your AI landscape is. So asking your third parties if they're leveraging AI, this should already be in your contracts now that they let you know. Similar to subcontractors, there should be something in your agreements saying, if they're going to have a material subcontractor, they need to let you know. Same with AI. If they're going to leverage a type of AI, they need to let you know what, how, what it's going to do, what it will do with your data, certain things like that. So there's some clauses that you can include within your contracts to really help you identify if your third party is even going to leverage AI and what they're doing with it. The other thing I would say is when you're trying to assess AI, leverage a framework. So I mentioned a couple already. Assessments are really questions on control frameworks. You're literally flip-flopping a control framework and saying, okay, I see this control. I'm going to ask a question related to this control. That's what questionnaires are. So making sure that you have that framework so um, you're not skipping over something you maybe should ask.
Ah, that's good. And I also was thinking along the way as you were speaking, like operating in a silo is probably one of the most dangerous things you could do right now in a corporate.
Absolutely. With
Oh,
any program, any risk
yeah,
domain. Yeah.
true. Yeah. So I got a question about TPRA. You're the third party risk association. You guys have been doing a lot of important work to support institutions in this area. Can you share what the TPRA is currently focused on to help members manage AI risk in their third party networks? Because I think this is a really important point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right away, as a community, everything that we create is for the community, by the community. And by the way, community means practitioners and also service providers. So, the service providers are those TPRM tools that are working to assess AI for you, help you assess it. They're involved in everything we create as well because they use it within their tool set. So the first thing that we did was create the artificial intelligence machine learning assessment. That's free for members to download off our website. It's a questionnaire. And by the way, if you're a practitioner, membership is free. So this assessment is free. The other thing is we worked with a startup organization of ours that we're helping to incubate called Prompt Armor to create a artificial intelligence large language model security and risk course. So this is on demand, it is 1 hour, and it does get into more of the technical aspects of AI, and it is also free. So if you would like a little bit more training on that, the other thing is we incorporate AI into most of our trainings. So we had back in March an artificial intelligence machine learning webinar where a lot of the things I'm talking about were included in that webinar, and we do have playback of it. All of our conferences, our virtual and in person, always include a track on artificial intelligence. So we're constantly talking about it. And then the last thing I would say is we have within our information sharing site those frameworks, links to those frameworks that I mentioned. So, like the NIST AI framework, and we have white papers on it and things like that. So, quite a bit available to you. We share frameworks. We're framework agnostic, so we don't stick with one in particular. So, you can find all that on our website.
Oh, thank you for that, Julie. And, to really comfort everybody else out there, in addition to what you mentioned on the resources, I believe that AI could feel quite overwhelming at first and, highly technical, and it could be a bit abstract for a lot of people out there. So just take away, how can risk professionals really break it down into something that's, I guess, more manageable and actionable for their organizations?
Yeah, so I would just encourage you again to look at those frameworks. But if I were to take a framework, let's take the AI and ML assessment that we created. Um, the key is, yes, you're going to assess AI from a security standpoint, but the differentiator is organizations need to be developing AI responsibly. And so
Mhm.
you'll hear that responsible AI, responsible AI. What does that mean? It really means that you are, or your third party is taking a comprehensive approach that balances innovation with ethical considerations. So, this ethics piece is really important for AI because it is making decisions and it's leveraging its environment or the environment that it is being introduced to. So, core concepts in responsible AI emphasizes like human centricity, social responsibility, sustainability, things like this. So, when you are evaluating AI, you're going to be looking at some of that. So, the first piece that you're really going to look at is capabilities and models of AI. So, you're going to assess this. There's really a few elements related to it, determining how effective and ethical an AI system operates. So, what specific AI ML tools and algorithms are being leveraged? How is it training the models? Is the performance of AI evaluated? Are there processes in place for continuous monitoring? Things like that. So that's capabilities and models. And then the next one is really data quality. So we talked a lot about data quality because if it has garbage coming in, it's going to have garbage going out, similar to today's any technology really. The only difference is it's learning from that data. So that it can be even more dangerous if the data isn't good. So when you're assessing that, you're making sure that they've reviewed the data, they being the third party, that the sources are clean, the data sent by your organization. You need to make sure that if you don't want it to train the model, it isn't. And similar other kind of protection, data protection controls, encryption, things like that. The next piece is that security and access. So similar to what you would do today, just making sure that sensitive data is protected, but also that they're maintaining their model with integrity and ensuring compliance with regulatory standards. So regulations still apply to this technology if it's breached or if it's not sending data securely or if it's not being encrypted at rest. Those still apply. So making sure that you understand the controls around those. And then performance and reliability. So is it operating as intended? Does it adapt to real world conditions and deliver dependable outcomes? This can also confirm that external providers are meeting your organization standards and avoiding risks related to underperformance or system failure. So, our metrics used to measure accuracy and reliability Is the AI system tested against prompts? How sensitive is the AI system to noise or outliers?
Hmm.
Are there safeguards in place to prevent misuse or abuse? That's really important. And then I would say, just lastly, really important now is governance and oversight. So ensuring that the system is used responsibly, safely, and effectively. So making sure that third party has in place strong governance and oversight, and they're adhering to similar standards of preserving the integrity of your organization's data and the AI ecosystem in which it lives in. So is someone responsible for the AI? What ethical principles guide the development of it? Do developers uphold ethical standards? Can humans intervene or override decisions? Things like that.
Oh, that's a great ending for this episode. I'm feeling more comfortable about AI right now, but at least, for the audience out there, there's checks we could do, there's steps we could take. It's limiting the risk as much as possible. So, Julie, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. And thank you for joining. You know,
Absolutely.
and the work you and the TPRA are doing is helping, leaders really cut through the hype and focus on what really does matter, building programs that protect both their institutions and, of course, the customers. So, a huge thank you to Julie for joining us today. And for our listeners, this is exactly what HRE Insights in 30 is all about. Short, sharp conversations with people who are shaping the future of risk and compliance. So be sure to catch our next episode where we'll be joined by Erin O'Loughlin, Senior Director of Training at the Association of Certified Financial Crime Specialists. Erin brings years of experience in intelligence, investigations, and compliance, and she'll share her perspective on what risk professionals need to know in today's environment. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and until next time, keep learning, stay curious, and take care. Thank you very much.